This is required watching, where we watch the essential films from the list of cinematic influencers and look at them through the lens of learning about filmmaking and how to move forward. I'm your host, Trey Epps. And this movie is about an Indian spy who takes on a leader of a group of mercenaries who have a nefarious plan to target his homeland. It's directed and written by Siddharth Adnan, also written by Shidar Raghavan and Abbas Tiwala. Sorry if I'm screwing up these names here. This is starring Shah Rukh Khan, Deepika Padukone, and John Abraham. Again, apologies if I'm screwing up these names, but this is Pathaan.
पठान के बनवास का टाइम खत्म हुआ।
पार्टी पठान के घर पे रखोगे तो मेहमाननवाजी के लिए पठान तो आया। और पटाखे भी लाएगा।
Okay, so just a quick warning, there may be some spoilers, so go watch the film or stay right here in case in case you wanna know what I gotta say. Before we get into it though, why don't you subscribe? Subscribe. You're watching or listening. Subscribe to this. It'd be great to have your support. Anyways, Pathaan is about listen. In this story, the Indian government is revoking a law granting special status to Jammu and Kashmir, which leads to a cancer-ridden Let me start over. This is a story about the Indian government who revokes a law granting special status to Jammu and Kashmir, which leads to a cancer-ridden Pakistani army general to seek revenge against India. He hires a former RAW agent, Jim, who leads a private terrorist organization to attack the president of India. Pathaan, a former RAW agent, and his team open a unit to stop Outfit X's plans and travel to Dubai, where they learn the target is actually two scientists and not the president. They also learn about a deadly virus called Rockbeach, which they must prevent from falling into the wrong hands. Pathaan travels to Spain and Moscow, where he is betrayed and captured, but is eventually freed. 3 years later, Pathaan and his team go to Africa and eventually to Siberia, where they recover one of the two orbs containing the virus. Jim provides an ultimatum to evacuate Indian soldiers from Kashmir, and the virus is spread in the lab. Pathaan chases Jim, and after a brutal fight, steals the detonator and deactivates the virus. Pathaan is reinstated into RAW and made the head of the JOCR, while Nandini is posthumously awarded with the Award of Bravery. In a mid-credit scene, Pathaan and Tiger decide to keep fighting threats. So, why did I see this? At this point, Pathaan has been out for 2 weeks, and I could not wait to see it. I was actually going to see it on my own on a Friday night in January, and then my plans fell through. And little did I know that I would spend the entire weekend hearing so much about this movie that I decided to reserve a ticket on for a whim. Much like most of the movies I watch these days, I don't really watch trailers for them. I decide if they look good, and I go check them out. Especially with Indian films. Indian cinema is still an enigma to me, and I don't have the same history, so me saying one looks good over the other doesn't really help. So just go in blind, watch the film, and see what's going to happen. But this was the first time that I saw Indian films on my movie theater showtimes. Maybe I wasn't looking, but this was the first time where I was seeing more and more Indian films come up on the list of movies that they were showing, and I wanted to jump at the experience of getting to see it. And little did I know that, I saw it a week later after it opened, and it was a full house, completely sold out. And I can tell you right now, it's not what I was expecting at all. I think I'd like to think the experience from seeing this film in India to here in America is completely different, but it was different from seeing just another old Western film. I mean, there was a baby there at 9 o'clock at night, and this is a 2.5 hour movie. It was amazing. Like it felt like a real community kind of, supported this couple while watching the movie, which is not something that I'm typically used to. But the baby was actually pretty quiet until about the middle of the film. There were like the aunts and uncles were showing up, and they were dressed to the nines. Like, that they made an event, like they made a point to see this movie. And I've never been in an audience that has had so much purpose of seeing a film. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's sitting in an audience full of people who want to see a film, and then they're sitting in an audience full of, honestly, mainly Indian Americans, or actually Indian Americans and Indian English people who were like there to see this film. And it was, the energy was quite interesting and amazing. And I came with my 2 sandwiches, and I sat there and ate my sandwiches, and I did not buy anything from the concession stand. So I'm just like you guys. We're in it together, because F those prices, they're ridiculous. But yeah, it was just really, really great to be around people who, I don't know, I ended up talking to some people there and having conversations with people, and I actually made friends. It was weird. It became a little bit of a community in the 30 minutes before the film, and during the film was just a lot of cheering and happiness and excitement. But upon watching the film, I thought, actually the first thing I thought in this big action sequence was, oh, this is kind of like Fast and the Furious. And I had never seen, of all the Indian films that I've reviewed so far, there's action films, and then there's like action films. And I think this is most certainly what I would say, like it's a modern action film, right? Which is very different from, like, let's say RRR, which has action in it. It wasn't necessarily an action film in this kind of way. I don't think. I think there's just, maybe I'm, correct me if I'm wrong if you guys see the difference, but like I look at Pathaan and I'm like, oh, this is like a star vehicle. This is something that I feel like people could most definitely like attach to one person, and it just lead an entire series. I didn't know that there was a series to hold on to.
I came to the film industry 32 years ago to be an action hero, but I missed the boat because they made me a romantic hero instead. I've only wanted to be an action hero. I mean, I love DDLJ and I love Rahul and Raj and all these good sweet boys, but I always thought I was an action hero. So for me, it's my dream come true to be able to surprise. As an actor, you really have to give yourself into the hands of a capable director. And I think this genre of film, nobody knows better than Siddharth. So there's not much to question. I'm working with him first time, and this kind of cinema he knows very well. So I just love the world that Siddharth makes.
I was very, very excited. This felt really fresh. It felt really new. It felt really different from the other films that I've seen that have action in them. This felt like one of those modern action movies, like a Jason Bourne or Fast and the Furious. In my mind, I thought this is like a Fast and the Furious movie. And I still kind of think that. I think it was, Fast and the Furious got rebooted, in the 5th movie. This movie was like at the 5th movie. There was a lot of ridiculous action, a lot of things that are completely implausible, right? But in a way that that somehow felt genuine to the world of the film, right? Like these 2 guys, we like to make fun of like Vin Diesel and The Rock, like pulling helicopters, right? And it's ridiculous and it's crazy. But then watching these 2 gentlemen fight with helicopters was kind of amazing. And the way they were tossing these buildings around, I for the sake of like actively watching it, I made note of how ridiculous some of the stunts were and how some of the action was. But I completely forgot about it the next second. Like you fell into the world and it became an immersive experience. And even if it was a bit over the top, it wasn't. Again, it felt really part of the world. I mean, the action is insane. At one point, the female character, Deepika, her character comes out of a cave in it's like skiing gear, which feels so ridiculous. And my audience laughed a little bit, but the laughter was maybe a second long before they remembered that they were still in action. And I feel like that may be the difference between like this over the top action, right? Is that like it felt like it served the story quite a bit. so people didn't mind as much, as opposed to gratuitous action for absolutely no reason, which this had as well. But I don't think it there was a good balance of it, I suppose, that made a big difference. Another thing that I thought was very, very different from this movie to some of the other movies that I've watched was the locations, the effects, and everything else that went along with it, right? Not only was the action different, but felt like a real, maybe this is why I referenced Fast and Furious, it felt like a real shift with the amount of locations that were being shown. Like, there was so many locations in this film where for a minute I was like, oh, this has to be green screen, because there's no way, knowing the budgets of Indian films, that they decided to take cast and crew to all these places, and to find out that they did, it's kind of incredible. And like, what I mean by incredible is that, like, just because, like, I don't feel like I see movies like this. Like, I've reviewed quite a bit of movies, and I've watched quite a bit of movies, and I haven't seen anything like this in just yet. And it was refreshing to see. It was great to see that something that felt very close to India, which I really appreciate. That I love that these movies really feel like there's a reason why they're Indian movies, you know what I mean? But also they're world movies. Like, there's danger in the world, and not just India. And you know, there's stuff happening around the world, and there's just a lot going on. The effects will always get me. It will always get me. I think in some places they don't look as great. However, and I always say however, I don't care. I don't care that they may not be the cleanest effects. Like, I don't think Marvel movies are the best effects. I don't think Avatar has the best effects. I don't think any one movie has the best effects always. But I'm blown away by how much this movie's budget was compared to what they were able to get away with. Like, again, with locations and explosions and everything else, it's incredible. And of course, this movie is at the time of recording this, last time I saw it was like one of the top 5 movies of India. And I feel like every time I talk about a newer film, I'm always talking about how it's beating records and speeding records. And I think that's because filmmaking is continuously changing. It's continuously growing, and audiences are like wanting more and more of the stories, or the stories that are being put out there. I don't know. Like, I think they want just as much as the big action stories as they do the mythological stories, as they do the quieter stories. And I really want to explore more quiet stories as well. Especially now I have access to a bunch of different ways of watching Indian film. I'm really obsessed with Indian cinema, and I haven't dug into Indian TV, but I have a few things bookmarked. I'm looking at like Japanese TV and film, and South Korean Japanese TV and film, and it's interesting how all of these are very, very connected in a way that is curious to me, because we don't talk about them in a connected way. We talk about Marvel, we talk about the big, shiny Western movies, and I think there's so much coming out of, you know, other places in the world that we just don't talk about. Anyways, the other thing that I thought was really great was just how sexy this movie was. Like, this was a really sexy movie, and I don't mean Deepika. I really hope I'm saying her name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. She is one beautiful woman, but there are about 4 of the guys on this film who are just shredded and muscly, and in a way that, like, I think for the first time I was like, I didn't realize the audiences of India were so drawn to this kind of sex appeal, body appeal, I suppose, right? It's just like, I think it's really interesting, and I think there's a subsect of man who appreciates another man's like muscly body, and like how they get into that shape, and like the obsession with getting in the shape. Like, I look at all the other guys in this film, and I'm like, I left and I was like, I need to work out. I need to do some push-ups. I need to get my body together. It was really fun. It was really great. Speaking of bodies and Deepika, I really thought, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. I'm so sorry. I feel like Deepika was maybe also one of the first times that I saw like a relatively dark-skinned Indian woman in a role like this, which I thought was interesting, because when I went to go look her up after the film, she looked a bit lighter than in the movie, and I don't know what the difference is. I don't maybe the photos are a bit lighter. Maybe I don't know, but I really enjoyed the fact that she was a darker skinned girl, and yeah, I feel like all the guys were relatively darker than usual, and I really enjoyed seeing different shades of Indian people, to be perfectly honest. I really, really appreciate that. And showing how, like, I don't know, I think she was able to have action sequences, be a villain, be that double agent or triple agent, because she was switching sides left, right, and center. I thought it was really, really cool for her to have her own agency and not just be this like bombshell, which she was. She is a bombshell, but she had much more to it than just that. So, anyways, I guess I'll kind of wrap up there by asking you what your guys' thoughts were. Actually, am I wrapping up there? Yeah, who knows? I have some more things to say. But what are your guys' thoughts on seeing this film? I know it's still very, very new. I'm sure people have seen it so many more times than I have, and have a whole history of this series more than I do. But I'm interested in your guys' thoughts, so please leave a comment. And again, subscribe, because that's what this is. Now, for fun facts, for people who don't know, if you really enjoyed some of those kicks from Shah Rukh Khan's kicks to John Abraham's punches, you can essentially say that those are wrestling moves, because they were all based on WWE wrestling moves, which is really funny because Casey O'Neill, who worked on Top Gun Maverick as a stunt coordinator, is the one who choreographed these stunts. That had nothing to do with wrestling, but hey, 2 fun facts. John Abraham collaborates with Yash Raj Films 13 years after the film of New York, which is in 2009. For the first time since Fan in 2016, Shah Rukh Khan had top billing. From Chennai Express, with the exception of Fan, to Zero, actresses took top billing over him. Rise was credited as himself playing the titular character. Therefore, his billing superseded Mahira Khan's. Hey, and that's some fun facts that I have for you. Let's see, one thing that I would do to make Pathaan better. How about an American remake? Hear me out. Imagine Western celebrities speaking English and fighting for their country. We could even have Spike Jonze do the music videos, because there was, at least in the middle and at the end, 2 very great music videos in this film. And if you think I'm joking, it's because I am, because that'd be a crazy idea. I'm sure it will happen, and I'm sure that this franchise is essentially called Fast and Furious, but I'm joking. I would not like a Western remake of this film. I think it's kind of perfect the way it is, and I think it's honestly in its infancy. So let's leave the series alone. I would not touch it whatsoever. Yeah, with that, I'd love for... Oh, actually, I guess I should explain. This is a part of a franchise. The first film was called Ek the Tiger, and its sequel, Tigers in the Hai, sorry if I'm screwing that up, centered on the fictional Raw agent played by Salman Khan, Tiger, and War in 2018 tells the story of a Raw agent played by Hrithik Roshan, who goes by Rogue. Before making War, the producer and director Siddharth Adnan came up with the idea of merging these films and creating a shared universe by crossing over characters who all belong to the Raw agency. However, War was still made as a standalone film without directly connecting to the first 2 Tiger films, supporting the idea of creating a proper foundation for the War characters before the crossover. Hear me out. Pathaan is a Pathaan is a Raw agent, and it's the first film to have characters appearing from both the Tiger franchise and War, and it will be marked as the 4th film in the Spy universe, and the first film for YFR to have the official crossover. Now, that means there's 4 films, and 3 of them are very loosely connected. It sounds a bit like an Iron Man situation where we have one guy named Tiger who's doing his own thing, and there are other Raw agents, and we start to slowly get to know other people. And we have War, and now we have Pathaan, and I believe there's another film coming out later on this year. I think it's the 3rd Tiger film. So it's all really going down. Tiger was in this film. The character Tiger was in this film, and it was fantastic to see scarf fighting is the only way I can call it. People just getting beaten up with scarves. It was an incredible action sequence on a train. Really, really good to see even a moment of a buddy action duo. And the only reason I even suspected that there was a series was because of that scene. People went crazy because Tiger appeared. They lost their minds, and I had no idea what was happening, but I was excited with them to see what was going to unfold, and it was a great, great scene. But yeah, listen, let me know if you're excited for this series. I will follow it as closely as humanly possible, because I think at least theaters around me are starting to release movies the same time as they're being released in India. So I'll be excited to be able to go to theaters the same weekend and report back on what I think, and we can continue having conversations. But with that said, is there anything coming out in theaters that I should be watching? Because I usually ask you guys about stuff that's already out, and I think I have an opportunity to watch more things that are coming out in theaters. So what are you looking forward to coming to theaters this year? Whether it's an Indian film, or a Western film, any film coming to theater, and I will be sure to try to cover it. But that said, Required Watching is a film club, so please leave your comments and let's continue talking, because this means oh so much to me, and your support and your comments and all of it just it really helps me get through. And I love talking about movies and talking to you guys, even if this is a bit one-sided. So yeah, I should do something about that this year. Maybe a live viewing of something online. Anyways, until next time, peace.